into the upper 40s. Mostly cloudy weather this evening. Overnight lows falling back close to 40. Generally cloudy on Thursday. Thursday's highs will climb upper 50s close to 60 with rain moving in Thursday night. Some heavy at times through the overnight as temperatures hold steady into the upper 50s. Cloudy weather on Friday. Chance of showers and turning gradual clearing, much colder through the afternoon hours. Mostly sunny into the lower 40s on Saturday. Sunshine 41 Sunday. Seatbelt area, June 20, 1460 WVOX, Whitney Global Media Station.
Thank you for joining us on 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community and open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
Start your mornings with radio's favorite morning team, Dennis and Tommy, and Good Morning Westchester, weekday mornings from 6 to 9, right here on 1460 WVOX.
1460. Stay tuned now for What Happened Here with Rich Thomas. Rich Thomas is the former mayor of Mount Vernon. And now, What Happened Here with Rich Thomas on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global Media Station. My name is Rich Thomas. You're listening to What Happened Here on 1460 on your AM dial or worldwide on WVOX.com or streaming on Instagram at Rich W. Thomas, on YouTube and Facebook at Mayor Richard Thomas. Now, today we have an action-packed conversation about my beloved city of Mount Vernon. Our guest in studio is Charles Knapp. Charles Knapp is the former Mount Vernon Inspector General from 2018 to 2019. He served as an ADA in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, as well as a former AUSA in the Eastern District here in New York. There's been a lot going on over the past few weeks, especially in Mount Vernon. Just some news yesterday broke about the state of New York seeking to make some changes at the Mount Vernon Public Library. However, I just can only tell you that there's so many things that we need to discuss when it comes to fixing Mount Vernon. But we first want to begin by reminding everybody that Mount Vernon once upon a time was fixed. Crime was down. In fact, in 2019, there was no one died from an illegal handgun being used in the city. Now, that might sound a little, off, but it's really on when you start looking at statistics. And ever since statistics were collected on gun violence, there has not been a year recorded where a person in the city of Mount Vernon did not die by a handgun. So I'm very, very happy to share that the work that was done under my administration led to the first year where in 2019, where illegal handguns violence, illegal gun violence was literally silenced because of the hard work by the Mount Vernon Police Department in partnership with other federal agencies, as well as the Mount Vernon community, which did a real job at being involved and engaged with trying to make the city safer. And Mount Vernon is a rich city, rich in history, rich in opportunity, and so many things. But I definitely know that there's so many twists and turns that has held the city back. Lots of things that as many of you know, I've worked to try and correct systemic corruption. And the latest report by New York State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli, he issued on January 31st, 2022, noting that there's problems with the Comptroller's office that amounted to $170 million spent in unauthorized electronic transactions. I'm going to say that number again. $170 million was spent in an unauthorized manner by the previous controller. And his audit is too little too late. Inspector General Knapp, who we'll talk to in a moment, identified many of these issues when the numbers were were still bad. They were in the millions, but they were far more manageable than what we're hearing right now. And it's just it's a real shame that Comptroller DiNapoli literally turned his back on the people in Mount Vernon. And now the taxpayers in Mount Vernon are faced with a 25% tax hike. There's numbers going around that from the administration that say it's 3% or 4%. And then there's another set of numbers that say when you add up all of the a la carte expenses, it comes up to 16%. But I'm adding in inflation as well as other costs that are on the horizon, given all of the drama that has been caused by the state of New York turning its back on the people of Mount Vernon. So the real number is approximately 25%. And you can only, imagine the impact that is going to have on homeowners, people paying rent, because that cost is going to be passed on. And if you thought your Con Ed bill was something, wait till you see Mount Vernon's tax bill, because they are not doing anything to go after the real culprits that caused this situation. Now, the answer, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, the answer is to hold the bank accountable for allowing all this money to go, to become mishandled. It was their fiduciary obligation to protect and work with my administration on safeguarding the monies. They chose to not do that. They willfully participated in this. In addition to the state of New York has a lot to explain, especially the Comptroller and the Attorney General, for ignoring the big issues that we're going to get into in a moment. But I just want the taxpayers and the people to know that the state of New York and our bank should be paying that bill, not the property taxpayers who were desperately seeking more relief and answers many years ago. And with that, I just want to bring on Inspector General Knapp. If you can just share with us about, if you can go back to 2019, early 2019, when you completed your preliminary report on the situation involving the Comptroller, and how what the state Comptroller now confirmed that she ruined Mount Vernon's electronic payment system by going back to a paper-based system. At that time when you were reporting on this, can you share with people some of the highlights and some of the details of your report from 2018?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mayor, for having me back. I'm glad I passed the January audition. The first thing that everyone needs to know is that although the Inspector General's office is in the city charter, the people of Mount Vernon had to go without an Inspector General for many years because the City Council and the City Controller refused to give it a budget. And after some time, I had suggested to you that given the political standoffs and the he said, she said nature of the back and forth with the politics, that I would serve for free as a volunteer. I had no office budget. I had no one working with me. And yet I managed all by myself through some investigative techniques that I learned at the DA's office under Mr. Morgenthau and at the U.S. Attorney's office as well. I was able to report on a variety of things. So my first report was January 28th, 2019. So 3 years and 3 days before the state controller, Tom DiNapoli, issued his audit. That first audit, by the way, had to do with the circumstances surrounding Mount Vernon's losing its credit rating, Moody's. And that immediately put into play about $24 million of outstanding debt. It shut Mount Vernon out, for all intents and purposes, of borrowing, and in and of itself created a tremendous amount of stress. The reason that I determined Moody's withdrew its credit rating was fairly straightforward because they said it. They said there had been no certified audit of the city or of any of the agencies, therefore there were no numbers for them to look at. This in turn was the result of two things. One, The city council wanted their longtime auditors to continue on the job, and you quite rightly wanted to institute a best practices of a rotation over the years of the accounting firms. You had brought in an accounting firm that looked at the Urban Renewal Agency.
Baker Tilly, for those that are wondering.
Yeah. I wasn't going to give a little shout out, but nevertheless, yes, that's the accounting firm, and they uncovered millions of dollars in questionable payments. They couldn't track anything. And that's why, of course, you need new accountants like Baker and Tilly to put fresh eyes onto everything.
Well, look, we know you're listening at the edge of your chair. Don't you dare change that dial. You're listening to What Happened Here on 1460 AM dial. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. There we go. So, yeah, I know. Hey, Gaurav. Hey, G man, we got to follow up. I gotta bill with you. We got some stuff to do in Dubai. So don't forget the little people over here freezing in New York, man. Good to see you, especially doing great news and great great commentary on the markets. I'd love to see, get your perspective on where things are headed between, inflation and the supply chain scramble. So definitely want to talk to you about that at some point. But when we come back from break, we're going to hear from, former Inspector General on a situation with New York State's audit that they did on the city of Mount Vernon, finding 170 million in unauthorized transactions, and then talk about the run up to how, issues were discovered in 2018 and 19 and so on that the state ignored. So, this context is important because it explains why property taxpayers in Mount Vernon are facing a 25% tax hike, and helps give context as to why many people stop trusting government, because when you count on them to do their job, they disappear. So, or at least we know the state did. I know I stood up for it, but just don't change that dial, stay right there. I'm just gonna, take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back. If you got questions or comments, leave them in the comment section.
989898. Riders for savvy. WVOX is now more than ever a smart, effective, and economical way to reach homeowners, doers, and activists in Westchester and the Bronx. To broadcast your theme or unique message, call Judy Fremont or David O'Shaughnessy to inquire about our reasonable, affordable, local advertising rate.
California playbook. So viewers watching from overseas. Coming back.
Former mayor of Mount Vernon on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. You're listening to the WVOX, a Whitney Global Media station. My name is Rich Thomas. You're listening to What Happened Here, and today we are discussing what happened here in Mount Vernon and New York State Comptroller DiNapoli. And we're here every Wednesday at noon asking the same question: what happened here, with a different situation, a different topic. And today's topic, our guest is Charlie Knapp. He is the former Inspector General for the city of Mount Vernon, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney, former AUSA with the Eastern District. And if you want to call in with questions about what happened here in Mount Vernon and New York State literally turning its back on the city and the people of Mount Vernon, you can call in at 914-636-0110. Again, that's 914-636-0110. Now, before we went to break, Inspector General Knapp was laying out a sequence of events of how, my administration discovered financial irregularities, brought in independent forensic accountants to evaluate and investigate, concerns that we discovered. And I'm going to turn it back over to Inspector General Knapp so he can describe, what happened to those accountants. Were they ever paid? Did they continue their work? Did they stop? But how did their information inform your reports about wrongdoing in the Comptroller's office?
So what I uncovered was the city council wanted to keep their compromised long-term accountants keeping an eye on the books. We had the then city controller, Deborah Reynolds, refusing to pay any accountants for anything. And on top of it all, around the same time, before I started looking into this, but in early January of 2019, the then city council president, Andre Wallace, publicly accused the former controller, Maureen Walker, of all sorts of cooking the books. In fact, as he put it, and these were the words he used, he referred to lying figures that were holding Mount Vernon back from understanding its position. Then Moody's yanked its credit rating. I reported on all of this. The Urban Renewal Agency was supposedly getting federal dollars, which were going to help the residents of Mount Vernon. Those got embargoed by the city controller, who just refused to send it on to the URA. And it needed some sort of state intervention because Mount Vernon is one of the largest cities in the state of New York. And when a large city loses its credit rating because of some shenanigans going on, one would think the state controller would take a look, but he did not. Next up was another major problem going on that I reported on February 25th, 2019. That had to do with the payment system that Mount Vernon had set up called Munis. And that was an electronic system which allowed the tracking of every invoice, every payment. It allowed the commissioners of the various departments to understand where they were in terms of their budget. And it was a completely transparent system. It had replaced what one might call an analog system of paper vouchers for reasons that were never cogently explained. The city controller, Deborah Reynolds, decided to trash the Munis system and go back to paper vouchers. Not only that, she required that the paper vouchers could only be brought to her by the commissioner, him or herself, not by any authorized person. And they were made to sit in her office, sometimes for hours, doing nothing. And more often than not, when they tried to present her with the vouchers, not only were they not date stamped, but she would reject them, tell them to come back later. And this created all sorts of havoc, as you can imagine. What I found from my investigation was that she had been trying to take over the Munis system by withdrawing the administrator credentials from the commissioner, who his job was to oversee the whole operation, and also from the people in the IT section of the city's government, because they actually needed to control the information flow to make sure that the people who needed the information got the information. She entered into a contract that was set aside by the city because she was not allowed to enter into any contract, and it was going to increase the costs to the city by over 60%. But the only person who has the authority under the charter to enter into contracts is the mayor, and it has to be approved by the Board of Estimate. None of this was done, and we were able to prevent that contract from from coming into being.
But just to give a quick caveat, the Board of Estimate approves the rate. They approve a portion of it. The mayor's signature by charter binds the city.
Right.
And while there may be, different views on that, a recent lawsuit was won by the Mount Vernon Fire Union, where their contract that I signed, because they agreed to do different types of work to fund their contract and pay for it as they build out operations. That was not authorized by the Board of Estimate, and the courts upheld the signature of the mayor as binding. And now it just demonstrates that the mayor's signature, as per Mount Vernon City Charter, is a very strong form of mayor government. But to not get lost in that point, I just want to ask a question to a lot of people. When this was happening in 2016, 17, 18, 19, a lot of people were like, this is out of control. This doesn't seem true. But it was, and we have a lot of reports and a lot of discussion to get into when we get back from break. Do not change that dial. You're listening to What Happened Here at WVOX. God. So for all those people watching at online, what we can tell you is I'm going to pull up the New York State Comptroller's audit report for those that are on Facebook and YouTube. And I'm just going to quickly show you some captions. And for those on Instagram, I'm going to read the captions so you can hear the captions from the State Comptroller's audit. And the State Comptroller basically said, the former Comptroller disbursements to outside counsel lacked oversight and transparency. The former Comptroller incurred outside counsel fees that blatantly disregarded the city's statutory scheme. And it talks about how the Comptroller did not properly account for non-payroll disbursements. And when you look at that and you ask yourself, how could the city Comptroller not properly account for non-payroll disbursements, meaning payment to vendors, payment on lawsuits the city won or lost, or settled, or anything to that effect. The Comptroller literally just wrecked Mount Vernon's ability to operate, and there was no care or regard by the state to step in and intervene. They only wanted one thing and one thing only. They didn't want any of these truths out, and they obviously did not want me in office, because had they listened to me when I first entered, we wouldn't be in this situation. Mount Vernon would be in a much better place, and I say that empirically because the numbers show that Mount Vernon was not only safe, but the economy was the third fastest growing economy in the state, and that's as ranked by New York State Comptroller DiNapoli. We would have become first, but that's what happens when, you give the city's finances a literal stroke. So there's so many things wrong with what happened. And a lot of people, some people said, Thomas is talking in terms of conspiracy. I'm not. I'm talking in truth and fact. Look at the state comptroller's observations. Mount Vernon's former comptroller did not properly account for 170 million in transactions. I mean, come on, out of control. But we're going to get into some of this when we come back from break. I think there are lots of questions to ask, but I just want to make sure that we touch upon the things that you guys want to talk about and get into, because there are so many things that we need to cover. And thanks for joining us. I see you, Chad, Rashi, my guy, Lieutenant Marcachuli. How you doing? Hey, Frank. No, there you go. And a lot of people. Thanks for being a part of this. Thank you. All right, we're coming back from break.
former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global Media station. We are here every Wednesday at noon asking the question, the show title, What Happened Here? Every Wednesday at noon. You can call in at 914-636-0110. Again, that phone number is 914-636-0110. If you have questions or you want to comment on the situation that we're discussing, we're live on 1460 AM radio, WVOX.com, and we're talking about Mount Vernon, my beloved city. I said a couple weeks ago that I was going to discuss the situation in the city on February 16th, and it just so happened that so much more news has come out, starting with New York State Comptroller DiNapoli's audit, affirming what we all knew, that there was financial wrongdoing in the city controller's office. And I had a long discussion with the Journal News about, why, we never answered the question, but I pointed out to them that the College of New Rochelle went bankrupt because its controller had a fraud scheme going on, and nobody believed it until it was too late and the institution was bankrupt. And, what I can tell you is the federal government stepped in and held that controller accountable for far less offenses than what New York State Comptroller DiNapoli flagged in his audit, which is too little, too late. We've all I can tell you is when you look at the two examples, you have to ask yourself, what stopped state officials from stopping this out of control, reckless controller that endangered the lives of so many people? Why did they not act? And the overwhelming facts were being described by our guest today, Charles Knapp, who served as Inspector General in the city of Mount Vernon from 2018 to 2019. He explained that he did it for free because the city controller and the city council did not want to fund an Inspector General office. And I want to remind everybody that, we heard of these chants and cries of defund the police after George Floyd, and I laugh because, it's terrible that anybody would want to defund the police. We want to hold bad policing accountable, like Derek Chauvin was held accountable, but defunding the police is ridiculous. But the Mount Vernon City Council and the City Controller of Mount Vernon defunded the Mount Vernon Police Department when I was mayor. They took away funding for a police commissioner and 20 cops in a city that was, struggling with violence and especially gun violence. But anyway, I was able to make Mount Vernon, one of the safest cities in the state. And in fact, the year 2019, the Journal News reported this. Nobody died by an illegal handgun in the city of Mount Vernon for the first time since they collected gun violence statistics. So the work that I put in place and the relationship built between the police and the community worked. And these are the things that Mount Vernon has went so far backwards on since, my departure from office. And while I do believe that there are larger forces at work to undermine the election and undo, all the things that I put in place to protect the people, a lot of people, again, had doubts, and I understand that when you're hearing it in real time. But when you look at State Controller DiNapoli's audit, you can only ask the question, how could the bank, how could the state controller, how could the state attorney general ignore $170 million in unauthorized electronic transactions and only focus on, issues that are literally beyond their jurisdiction to look at without the authorization from a sister agency? Why would they break the law to come after a person that's trying to correct corruption in Mount Vernon that desperately needs corruption corrected? So Inspector General Knapp, he was talking about how Mount Vernon had systems in place, an electronic payment system that was transparent, and how his report detailed how the city controller Reynolds just completely obliterated that electronic system and went to a manual-based system, making people wait in her office for hours at a time to be told that she will not see them. And again, when this was happening, the news reported it as personal differences, not policy crisis. But here we are. Mount Vernon is still struggling through it. And Inspector General Knapp, your reports were the foundation, I guess, for this 2022 audit by the state controller, because it seems to almost replicate everything that you pointed out, from the controller's inability to hire outside counsel to the controller's, former controller Reynolds' disregard for everything. I mean, just this seems like a horror show.
Well, the way I look at it is, having read the state controller's report, I could only have wished that he had plagiarized my reports as he did in 2022, but did it in 2019, when it could have avoided millions and millions of dollars going unaccounted for, could have removed Controller Reynolds. When I reported in March 1st of 2019 of her illegal retention of a private attorney for her, who she had paid around $70,000 in fees at that point. And we, of course, had no idea what the hourly rate was. No one ever saw a retainer letter. She must have signed it on her own. She was also taking money surreptitiously out of the corporation counsel's accounts to pay. But this was about $70,000. If you want the actual number that I could account for, was $69,284. Meanwhile, the state attorney general, Letitia James, was going after you for having attorneys paid by the city. The difference was you were upfront about it. The corporation counsel issued a legal opinion confirming that it was okay, and the grand jury refused to indict you. And yet, thumbing her nose at everyone was Deborah Reynolds, who didn't even so much as submit anything to the city council or any organ of government, did not discuss anything with the corporation council, as she's supposed to retain outside counsel if appropriate, according to the city charter. Tish James gave her a complete pass. I'm sure that the $69,000 from March 2019 has burgeoned into a nice six-figure number by now, yet nothing ever happened to her. Similarly with State Controller DiNapoli, when you talk about too little, too late, when I reported on, for instance, the destruction of the Munis system, I also flagged the issue of the check signing, when you were presented with stacks of checks, and it was all or nothing. She wouldn't give backup. She wouldn't entertain questions. And if you refused to sign any of the checks, none of the checks would be processed. That was something that Controller DiNapoli pretended to be shocked at, but he was 3 years too late in being shocked.
So there's a caller on the line that I'm certainly is shocked by the situation in Mount Vernon. Caller, you're on the line. Thank you for tuning in. We're tuning in to what happened here in Mount Vernon.
I think you hit it on the head. Deborah had to get to you somehow to try to push you aside. And that's bad news. And I certainly hope that there's more to be learned from you, because that all respects where you're coming from.
Thank you. And, look, I just know this, and I was reflecting on it last night when I was thinking about the show today. In 1999, I lost a dear friend to gun violence. His name was Arthur Sean Rose. He was a star football player from Mount Vernon, and he was gunned down as part of a jealousy situation with a former football teammate that we grew up with named Kyle Watson. And here goes two young people. Literally, I was friends with them from like 5, 6 playing football at Memorial Field. And yet one of them gained access to a handgun and killed the other because out of a jealousy situation. Now, I reflect on that because it's like, I think back to that time, like, what happened? How could Kyle, just go the wrong path? And I look at all the money that was available back then, all the way through to 2022. There's so much resources available to help young people, seniors, communities, stop gun violence. But those monies were diverted to shady deals, and we'll talk about some of that when we come back from break. Don't change that dial. Listen to what happened here on WVOX. We have another caller? Yeah, you want to ask Vince if he wants to hang on? I'll come right back to him at the top if he has anything else to say, or if he wants to drop off. Ask him. Ask him. Yeah. So we're approaching our final segment. We covered like the surface. What are some of the things that we need to touch upon before we wrap up the show? Because I want to make sure we at least make sure we get to some of the other pieces of stuff that we need to get to.
I think that we need to cover and you hinted at it, the lack of media interest.
Okay.
And I think that it's now really in the lap of Governor Hochul.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to discuss.
So we'll begin there, and then after the final segment wraps up, we will I'll spend a few extra moments online just tying up any loose ends. And for those that are watching online, ask that you share this and you comment and you let people know that we're talking truth here. This is not conspiracy, and that's what I find interesting, because the news is like, oh, it's a conspiracy. No, this is reality, and this is when conspiracy is reality. $170 million go missing. That's literally what happened. So, I mean, look, it sounds crazy. It is nuts, but this is what we're dealing with. And when I think about Mount Vernon, I think about a place that is on the road to greatness. And even though we hit a speed bump and we got delayed, Mount Vernon is going to be all right. We're going to get through this so long as the current administration reverses course on this 25% tax hike, because that is something that we really need to unpack. And I hope that they take the steps to hold the bank and the state accountable and make them pay as opposed to taxpayers pay, because it's ridiculous to turn to people who are getting shocked by electric bills, that are 100% higher or more than they were last year, and to keep asking them to pay more when you're not giving them the performance or the services that you claim to give. So I think that there's going to be a huge revolt by taxpayers because of the lack of vision and lack of creativity, or you say lack of courage to hold the bank accountable and to hold the state accountable for not stopping the reckless actions of the Mount Vernon controllers, but also for basically enabling it. How come the state and the bank allowed so much financial chicanery to go on in the first place? Why? Well, we're coming back from break. There we go.
And now back back to What Happened Here with Rich Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. You're listening to WVOX, a Whitney Global Media station. My name is Rich Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon. The name of our show is What Happened Here? And the question we are answering today is what happened here in Mount Vernon? What happened with the state comptroller, the state attorney general? Now the situation is in the lap of Governor Hochul. We're here every Wednesday at 12 noon. Call letters is 1460 on your AM dial, streaming live online, WVOX.com. You can call in 914-636-0110. And before we went to break, we had a caller, Vince. And Vince, before I bring you in, I just want to set this up because, while we were off air, and while we was leading into off air, I shared a little personal story. What sort of motivated me to want to kind of clean up corruption in Mount Vernon is because in 1999, I did lose 8 friends to gun violence as a teenager in Mount Vernon. And it really shook me because I knew these people. I knew they were good kids. They just got caught up. And I said to myself, man, if we just had a little bit more investment in youth activities, things for seniors to do, to be involved. And, you just think about simple things. That money was available, but it was steered to, terrible uses, in my opinion. And when you started unpeeling that onion, you start realizing it is an onion, and it makes you cry. And that's where the financial mishandling of Mount Vernon's money over the years contributed to all the problems we have with taxes, to violence, to crime. And it's a shame because Mount Vernon has so much history, so much promise that we can redeem. But now, I was a casualty of trying to clean up the corruption, and I'll just try and summarize this in 30 seconds. Campaign finances are complicated. I take responsibility that there were errors in my campaign, but they were not criminal. They were clerical. And the State Board of Elections never ruled. They determined that my campaign filings were civil, just like the Lieutenant Governor of New York State. He spent $25,000 on his wedding. I spent at least $60,000 on my campaign. I reimbursed myself a portion. I was entitled to stipends and other things, reimbursement. And even the Westchester District Attorney, she kicked in $300,000 of her own money into her campaign. And what happens when she reimburses herself?
And given the nature of the accusation and how everybody else is to clean up the situation with Thomas Harris, gives you a little bit of a slap on the wrist. But the fact of the matter is, I think a lot of the evidence takes around and the flaws that think they run the show, it's all about interlineage, which with the straightforward approach. And we appear to a side set of people. I don't know what their real quality is other than the money.
Yeah.
In fact, when you pointed it out, I still remember how many times you were interviewed, as you said, I reached out to the attorney general when you were mayor. I reached out, I'm trying to get up, nobody would step up. And that was a disgrace, Badman. Absolute disgrace. All the people in Mount Vernon at every turn. I just hope everybody understands that.
Thank you for that observation, and that's why I wanted to make sure the record was created, and it was clear that we had systems, we had policies, we had procedures, and I was counting on the law to protect me. I was counting on the law to be able to go to the State Board of Elections to deal with any filing issues. And that's it. But I was denied that. And for those that are listening and watching, the way it works is the State Board of Elections must issue a referral, a criminal referral to the state attorney general before the state attorney general can act on campaign finance issues. They skipped that step. And they skipped that step, and that's where a Manhattan judge ruled in my favor that it was illegal and it should have never happened. But that's where you get into all of this. You have to ask questions about why would they do that?
Out and so and being informed of people.
Yeah. Well, what I do know is at least, we're in a position where this new governor, Governor Hochul, it is an election year, and she is going to have to come to Mount Vernon seeking support. And I hope and I look forward to the people of Mount Vernon asking the question of, what happened here with Mount Vernon? How come, you are, looking for our support? Are you going to support Mount Vernon? I know Charlie Knapp, you have some thoughts on that?
Yes. Part of the problem is you have a press that really just did not do its job. And one of the questions that could have been very easily asked of the state controller's office is the following. In April of 2016, Mr. DiNapoli issued an incredibly broad criminal referral to Eric Schneiderman, who was then the Attorney General, for an investigation, and I'm quoting, into the financial affairs of the city of Mount Vernon and the prosecution of any individual who may have committed indictable offenses arising out of such investigation, prosecution, or both. That is the description given by one of the assistant attorney generals who was busy prosecuting the mayor for $12,900 of reimbursements, which is about half the amount of Mr. Benjamin, the current lieutenant governor. But the question is this. You issued a criminal referral into investigating the financial affairs of Mount Vernon. What was it that you found that was so critically wrong that a criminal referral was required? And why was there no follow-up? This is 2016. By 2019, my reports came out. And you didn't do anything, Mr. Controller, until 2022 when, the horses had all left the stable. And what exactly was going on? In 2019, actually, you had sent your office inadvertently sent some auditors down to look at the ethics statewide, and Mount Vernon was selected to represent Westchester County. I sat with those auditors for several hours and explained the much broader problems. They said their audit would take about 3 weeks. I came in the next day. They were gone. He sent me an email saying there was an emergency situation. I called him. I spoke to him. He said, we got orders from on high to leave. I can't talk about it. Speak to my superiors. So I called Newburgh. They told me to call Syracuse. And she told me to call Albany. I did, and they said we'll put you in touch with the press office. And I said, I'm the Inspector General for the city of Mount Vernon. I'm not going to deal with the press office. I'm going to deal with the Chief of Investigations, who directed these state auditors to leave Mount Vernon. Ultimately, I got nowhere, and the press release was, well, there's all sorts of litigation going on, and we felt we couldn't audit anything. And if you look at the January 2022 audit, there's still litigations going on, but somehow they've, 3 years after the fact, confirmed everything that I said. And it's just tremendously frustrating because I suppose you get the government that you deserve. And if people are not interested or active in holding the DiNapolis and the Jameses' feet to the fire, then there's really no hope. This did not have to happen. It could have been stopped, assuming this was a legitimate criminal referral in 2016. Nothing prevented Mr. DiNapoli from looking into things back then. By the end of 2018, I think it was, there was a petition to Governor Cuomo to remove the city controller for all the reasons that were documented in my subsequent reports. No action was taken on that. The only thing I can think of is that the governor's office does not have the financial expertise to examine this quite extraordinary petition. So who did he turn to? He had to have turned to the state controller's office, and what was he told? Because no action at all was taken on that petition. No follow-up was taken on any of my reports, and that's where we are today.
Well, my challenge to all of you out there is to share this segment, share this show, share it online, challenge the Journal News, challenge media to ask a question. What happened here in Mount Vernon? And ask Comptroller DiNapoli and the New York State Attorney General, what happened here? Why'd you guys look the other way on 170 million at least in problems in Mount Vernon? Don't forget Memorial Field, my beloved, but we'll come back to that at another show. You've been listening to What Happened Here with Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon, special guest Charlie Knapp, former inspector general. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week at Wednesday. See you next Wednesday at noon. What Happened Here? All right. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of today's show. I know it was action-packed and it was full of a lot of information. And I thank Vince for calling in and listening and adding to the conversation, and our guest, Charlie Knapp, for bringing the facts, literally. You know, we may need to create a show, The Facts with Charlie Knapp.
Yeah.
But I like his favorite one that he told me, it's nap time.
The only time you stay awake.
Well, look, thank you all for joining the show. Please do share it, comment, like and subscribe. Let everybody know, what happened here at Mount Vernon now that you got the download and the drop. And I look forward to having this conversation with, not just the taxpayers in Mount Vernon, but with the governor herself someday soon as she seeks to campaign in Mount Vernon for your support. We have to ask her what happened here. What are you going to do to help fix Mount Vernon after the state turned its back and broke it, or allowed it to become broken by some dirty politics? But we'll get into that. Stay awake, stay alive.